Thank you, Kel, and kia ora, and welcome everybody. It's amazing to see you all here, and I was really blown away when I walked in, just a couple hours ago and saw so many familiar faces. And it really struck me in that moment how much this project is about all of us and all of you. And even though myself and the team I've been working with have been thinking of this as our research project, it really is hitting home today how much that's not the case, that it's a project that's about all of us. As you know, as Steve mentioned earlier, this project grew out of the vision and the momentum from Grow North in February. And what I was asked to do was put together a project team. And what we wanted to do when we put together that team was take seriously the concept of the triple helix. So the triple helix is a multi-sector model of collaboration that's been widely understood as underpinning many of the world's successful innovation ecosystems, and Howard certainly talked about that. This model combines the interests, resources, and energies of industry, government, and universities, and we see these sectors as inclusive, so this also incorporates important contributions from health and medical sectors, transportation and housing, nonprofit industries, and so on down the line. So our team, at its core, tries to take advantage of this triple helix by incorporating, as Kel mentioned, folks from ATEED. So we have Rachel Child, who I see in the back middle there, who's been instrumental working with us, as well as Russell O'Brien down here in the front. Kel and Tony Cohey working with us from the industry sector, and then myself, as well as Associate Professor Farouk Bali. Farouk, are you here? I don't blame you. Farouk Bali, who's in the School of Econ and Finance, Pro Vice Chancellor Ted Zorn, Fiona Mogridge from the Auckland Knowledge Exchange Hub on campus, as well as an amazing team of research assistants have all been working on this project together. So the triple helix also informed the design of our research. So our research included desktop research and literature reviews, survey distribution, and interviews with key stakeholders, as well as a visit to the Waterloo Innovation Ecosystem, which you know more about now. For its part, the survey was designed to assess the quality and kinds of innovation being undertaken in firms in Auckland North. And the interviews, which is how I know many of you, were designed to gain a sense of interest in the innovations ecosystem, but more than that, what are the opportunities and obstacles that would be perceived by you, by the stakeholders in that ecosystem? So thus far, our interviews have mainly incorporated the views of people from industry. So this includes in medical, technological, construction, manufacturing industries, and so forth, because we wanted to begin our research with a strong understanding of that viewpoint. But our research so far does also include some voices from education and government, and our research in that area is ongoing. It's important to gain credible insight, we feel, with face-to-face interviews with industry, although doing this contains some challenges. So business people, we might find, are interested in painting their businesses in a good light. And sometimes they want to use the interview to construct a particular message. So it's difficult sometimes to find out what the reality of their situation is from just one interview. So the way that we approached this was to use this particular model as a guide. By framing industry along the garage to global pipeline, we're able to gain a sense of how perspectives may change at different phases of growth. So we conducted the first lot of interviews with leaders of global ventures, those people who have varied and extensive experience. And these people are often busy, they often travel a lot, as many of you know, but once we were able to connect with them, they really came on board and gave us a lot of their time generously. Now, these industry leaders helped give us a good platform, some background context, and benchmarks of understanding, so that when we interviewed people who were in the more emerging and growth phase of the pipeline, we were able to better understand what they were doing, again, within the context that we got from the global businesses. And then by the time we came to the third group, the startup and emerging phase, we were more alert to the similarities and differences amongst entrepreneurs along the pipeline and their perspectives on New Zealand innovation. So I want to spend a few minutes talking with you about the key findings of the research. Probably that's not surprising to many of you. I am an academic. At the end of the day, I am a total nerd. So I'm going to try to not bore you too much, but really try to highlight some things that you certainly already know, but then also some things that maybe will be food for thought as we move forward. Specifically, I'll talk about the opportunities and the obstacles or advantages and disadvantages to setting up an innovation ecosystem here. And then I also want to talk about some key problems and paradoxes that we were seeing in our research. So first, the opportunities and the obstacles, or advantages and disadvantages. Again, a lot of this is not going to be particularly surprising, especially as this represents the perception of many of you in the audience, so the perception of those in the triple helix. Let me start with opportunities. Much of what participants saw as advantageous about establishing an innovation ecosystem in the Auckland North revolved around our population. So clearly we have Massey University as well as AUT and Unitech nearby. We have numerous secondary schools, many of them with a decile rating of 9 or 10. Many of the Auckland North schools already have innovation programs underway, and I know we have some of those educators here with us today. We've got robotics competitions going on, we've got other innovation projects, we've got schools, secondary schools working with tertiary institutions, and we also have some of our industry participants working with or wanting to work with our secondary schools. The strength of our education here is only enhanced by the growing diversity of this super city, and Auckland North is part of that. As Professor Paul Spoonley at Massey University wrote in the New Zealand Herald supplement that you have in front of you, Auckland is the destination city for most immigrants to New Zealand, and that certainly was true in my case. We can look forward to a growing mix of ideas and cultural identities here that will contribute to these opportunities to create an inherent and progressive innovation ecosystem. Again, a lot of this is not surprising to you, so I won't belabor some of these other points. Infrastructure was cited as something that we have here that is particularly good, particularly broadband, which became clearly necessary, that this is central to enabling New Zealand to develop our capabilities offshore. But then also lifestyle, again, not surprising. People talked about the work-life balance, they talked about the location. Not surprisingly, the people from Takapuna said this a lot as we were having coffee in front of the beach. They talked about the importance of lifestyle. But what are some of the obstacles that we are going to need to think about or disadvantages to consider? Although funding clearly exists, funding is often offered by ATEED, Callahan Innovation, MB, and others, participants talked about bureaucratic difficulties in accessing this financing. Part of this was attributed to us still finding our way after amalgamation and figuring out who has the resources and where are they and how do I get them again. Moreover, any interest in pursuing new funding or collaboration opportunities had to be carefully balanced with the all-encompassing nature of startups and business development. So basically, the short of it is people are busy. And they're made busier because of a tendency for New Zealand firms to go it alone, or because of a lack of awareness regarding what collaborative opportunities exist. So this ends up becoming cyclical. People are too busy to collaborate, but it's collaboration that could potentially free up that time. Participants also discussed difficulty with finding talent, and they spoke of a skills shortage. So this has been referred to as the New Zealand brain drain by others. But again, if we refer back to Paul Spoonley's work, we could also think of this as an opportunity to think about a brain exchange with immigration and diversity coming onto our shores. Of course, some of these opportunities and obstacles are similar to what we might see in other innovation ecosystems like Waterloo, and Howard certainly alluded to a few of these. However, the research also surfaced what I would say are particular or unique problems and paradoxes that talk to us about some of the underlying factors to consider as we continue to grow innovation in Auckland overall, as well as north of the bridge. Okay. So in other words, these problems or paradoxes are key to pay attention to because they are what will uniquely inform what we are able to do here. If you've been listening to me talk over the past few months about this project, you know that one of the things I continue to say is that we cannot become a Silicon Valley because we are not Silicon Valley. We have to become what we are going to become. And I think that these tensions or problems really start to get at what we need to grapple with. First, the research surfaced anxiety over how innovation is defined in this country. Of course, there are numerous definitions of innovation. We all have our own definition of innovation. But what we found were our participants were particularly anxious about how are you defining innovation and am I going to be in that definition or not. I wonder if this is because of the deep-seated culture of Kiwi ingenuity. If I'm not included in that definition of innovation, it doesn't just mean I lose out on resources, it means I don't fit the cultural identity. So there's a real identity question there around innovation and Kiwi ingenuity. Second, we saw a lack of meaningful conversations across the sectors in the triple helix. So participants in each sector hold perceptions about what others in other sectors are or are not doing or thinking. And this contributes to a suspicion about those motives. So we've got industry saying government won't fund us. We've got universities saying industry won't listen to us. And the cycle continues in that way. So there's clearly a need to be starting to talk through the sectors and among the sectors rather than missing those conversations. Third, as I've already alluded to, the research surfaced the concept of the number 8 wire as one that is fantastic for idea generation, and Howard also talked about this as well. But participants also suggested that this metaphor only takes us so far. When it comes to scaling ideas and taking them global, innovators are perceived to lack a robust understanding of the global context and the markets with which they want to engage, or the mentorship needed to help them navigate that. As part of this, it became clear through the project that critical experiential knowledge is not being valued as a way to teach others who are coming up through the pipeline. So the ecosystem lacks a framework for those who have experience to mentor others. And it lacks the opportunity for startups to figure out how to link to those resources and also discern which resources are going to be more or less helpful in their own journey. A final puzzle involves the boundaries of Auckland North. That is, as we engage with stakeholders about Auckland North, it often happened that our conversation easily slipped into discussion about the North Shore. And this was, my own fault as well. I mean, it's very easy to start thinking only in terms of the North Shore, even though we have to remember that this initiative is for the community in all of Auckland North. So part of this, of course, is perhaps because we already have recognizable initiatives going on the North Shore. Clearly, we have Takapuna, which commonly referred to as Tekapuna. We've got Smales Farm. We've got things that are going on in Albany. We've got the Millennium AUT Center. So I think that it's often easy to equate Auckland North with the North Shore. But I also think that that's a problem that we're going to need to make sure, or a puzzle that we need to make sure we continue to pay close attention to. And not just in terms of making sure we are more inclusive about defining Auckland North, but that we also figure out and continue to figure out ways to connect Auckland North to the other regional ecosystems in Auckland overall. So, excuse me, important to note, of course, thank you. Important to note is that these problems and paradoxes are not necessarily easy to fix, and some of them are deep-seated and enduring. But we think that through tighter integration, through collaboration, through keeping an open mind and keeping this conversation going, we can not only fix these problems, but even embrace them as opportunities to do something unique. So in short, let me show you kind of a snapshot of what we found with our research. This project suggested to us an image of how we can conceive of the innovation ecosystem as it currently stands, but also how it might look in 3 or 10 years' time. So you can see here the slide on the left. Excellent, but largely invisible work is being done here. Sectors are talking past each other. Work is often being done in silos, and it's difficult for startups and emerging ideas to connect with the resources needed. The slide on the right, the ecosystem in 1, 2, 3, or 10 years' time. Awareness and visibility of what we are doing together, clear connections, an ability to collaborate, a framework for connecting, stronger mentorship for accessing New Zealand innovation ecosystems as well as global innovation ecosystems. So I want to tell you the picture that we want to paint, and then I'm going to hand it back to Kel to talk about the next steps. A 3-year vision starts hopefully, with traction gained by bringing together champions from multiple sectors, not just the triple helix, but a pentat of players which recognizes the strong contributions from secondary and tertiary education, as well as the need for increased investment. So referring back to what Howard said about how crucial it was for them to get venture capitalists into the ecosystem there, which is why we have revised the triple helix to be more of this pentad of players, because each of those plays a significant role. In 3 years' time, I would like to say that we will have a recognized innovation hub in Auckland North that merges business but also public interests to draw together the innovation community. And through these efforts, New Zealanders are able to connect to offshore opportunities, but Auckland is also a stronger magnet for entrepreneurs, innovators, and educators here. A 10-year vision extends this. The population and diversity of Auckland is changing and increasing, and Grow North must take a long-term view. In 10 years, I would want to see a series of community-oriented innovation hubs across Auckland North that are themselves connected, but also draw heavily on the unique strengths of other regions in Auckland, such as the Health Innovation Hub located around East Auckland, the Food Bowl Innovation Network in South Auckland, and certainly connecting up with those and other initiatives that ATEED has helped paint for us. When I first moved here, one of the things I noticed pretty quickly was New Zealand watches the world, but the world doesn't necessarily watch back, which was coming from the United States, that was a revelation. In some ways, this is incredibly freeing. This means we get to experiment, we get to mess up, we get to make mistakes, we get to discover who we want to be and what we can do. So this gives us an incredible sense of freedom and openness. At the same time, this opportunity poses a challenge for us, a welcome challenge. Rather than continue to look outward to capture what's out there and bring back what others are doing here, Grow North, I hope, will inspire us to create something that's uniquely New Zealand and demand that others look to us for that instruction, rather than us looking to them for that instruction. Okay, so what are the first steps when we start thinking about moving forward with this? I'm going to hand it back to Cal.